Hello and welcome to Freya's Tropical Garden. This is another chance to see my video on Arundel Castle and the Summer Plant Fair that featured in episode 4. Arundel Castle is well worth a visit in its own right. The original castle was built in the 11th century by Robert de Montgomery, and you can still walk around parts of the original castle, although most of it was damaged during the English Civil War and later restored, which was completed in the 1900s. But you can walk around and see the living areas of this castle. But for me, the real beauty of this castle is its gardens, planted with so many tropical plants, and with several different beautiful water features, some of them quite unusual. Like this floating crown, which is just suspended on top of the water stream. There's 40 acres of gardens to explore here, including a glass house and rose gardens, as well as a beautiful kitchen garden. But it's mostly the tropical planting that I'm focused on today. There's a large variety of some of the UK's most hardy palm trees, as well as cordylines and yuccas, fatsias, tree ferns, and some lovely ruins. The head gardener here is Martin Duncan, and he manages this estate with a team of 7 gardeners and a few volunteers. And if you check out the Arundel Castle website, he does leave quite a few tips for gardeners. And I think you'll agree these are just stunning gardens to walk around. So this is the perfect setting for the Summer Plant Fair. I'm here today in Arundel Castle for the Summer Plant Fair. Arundel Castle in West Sussex is a fabulous location for the Summer Plants Fair and forms part of the Plants Fair Roadshow. There are many different nurseries exhibiting and selling plants, including Miles' Japanese Aces and Fleur de Lis, both of whom I've interviewed in episode 3 in a previous plant fair. But today I interview Steve from the Noname Nursery and Claire from Beaver Plants. I'm here with Steve at the Noname Nursery.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you came up with that name?
Yeah, so me and my partner Louise, we started the Noname Nursery. Literally, we're quite new. We've only been in business for the past year, and we're both gardeners in Sandwich. So we're East Kent, just past Canterbury, right down in the medieval town of Sandwich. And in Sandwich there's the Noname Street and the Noname Shop. So we wanted something that gave a nod to our local town, but also because we didn't want to get pigeonholed into just one kind of plant, being known for one kind of plant. We grow lots of drought-tolerant herbaceous perennials, we grow lots of hardy exotics, but also just a really eclectic mix of plants, things that we like and we're interested in growing for our garden, and then we share that with other people. So we think of ourselves as gardeners first and growers second. And so the Noname Nursery just seemed like a nice nondescript way, because who really cares what a nursery is called? We're interested in good garden plants. That's what we all really want. Absolutely. Things that flick our switches.
Right, so would you like to tell us a little bit about some of these plants that you grow? Because I do feel like I'm walking through my own garden looking at some of these.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm sure a fellow exotic enthusiast, Tetrapanax, Papyrifera rex or T-Rex, that's just a great way of thinking of a Jurassic plant, if you like. If given time and enough shelter, these will form trunks, and they can come up with like huge umbrella-like leaves, almost a metre across. When I was head gardener at a country house called The Salutation, we had a small stand of Tetrapanax that reached about 3 meters high, so big that we were able to sit with tables and chairs underneath the stand of Tetrapanax. They were magnificent architectural and surprisingly hardy. Like all exotics, you're gardening on the fringe. You can't guarantee hardiness of anything, because so much of it has to do with how much moisture a plant's getting, how windy a location is, whether it's a frost pocket. But for an average UK winter, Tetrapanax are normally absolutely fine. Another interesting plant which catches people's eye is the Milianthus, and when you crush the foliage it smells, and some people don't like it, smells like peanut butter. That's what I think anyway. If you've got a peanut allergy, of course, it might be a near-death experience, but no peanuts in the plant at all. But It does have that pungent smell, as some people refer to. I think of it as more like peanut butter. But one of the finest architectural foliage plants that is reasonably hardy. You know, you can get down to -10. The plant can take a real hit and almost melt back to the ground, but then reshoot again from the base and will make a surprisingly good comeback. You know, exotic gardens by their nature look at their best in the second half of the summer, which is also quite an appeal to me, because traditional cottage gardens are often brilliant up until June, July, and then go off the boil a bit. Well, if you also incorporate exotics and plants of an exotic nature, then you can keep the show going right into the late autumn until the first frosts appear. You know, Farfugium japonicum, Oreo maculata, you know, some people, I mean, I look at that leaf and I think of, you know, the night sky almost like a constellation. For some people, they think it's been sprayed with herbicide. You know, it depends whether you like, you know, variegation or not. And so I think the gardening world is divided on variegation. I personally adore it. This plant is from the woodlands of Japan, and so it wants shade and it doesn't like to dry out. That's the key thing. Surprisingly hardy, so we find they stay evergreen until you get down to about -7 or 8, and then it will often retreat back into its rise zone. Used to be Farfugiums were Ligularia family, so they were classified as a Ligularia, and you can actually see in its leaf how you could understand, oh, okay, it kind of looks like a Ligularia, but much more leathery. And so the leaves, there's quite a commitment on the plant to create that leaf, so it wants to hang on to it, so it's virtually evergreen. Only gives up on it if it gets really, really, really cold. And actually, often where you've got them in sheltered spots in a woodlandy garden, they tend to be more sheltered naturally anyway, so they tend to stay virtually evergreen. And of course, they make excellent exotic subjects because of their nature, because of the way they look. They do, if they're very happy, have a big orange flower in the late summer, but primarily the reason to grow it is for this wonderful foliage. And underneath, so it could be the plants that provide the shade in the summer. So you might have towering cannas or a tetrapanax or whatever large banana leaf above it, providing the shade for the Farfugium. They don't mind actually a bit of winter sun on them because there's not a lot of strength to the sun. But in the summer, they prefer to be in a shady spot. But that shade could be provided by foliage from your other exotic plants and not necessarily in a woodland setting in the UK. So that makes it a great subject for exotic gardening.
Fantastic, thank you. Now I gather you've got the National Garden Scheme coming up. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we opened for the Yellow Book. So the National Garden Scheme, and our garden is called Sweetbriar, and we are open next weekend. Let me just have a look and tell you. We are open on the 9th, Sunday the 9th of July. Our home is called Sweetbriar, which kind of thinks all romantic cottage garden, and our front garden is a really traditional cottage garden. Our back garden is a exotic paradise, and we named our home Sweetbriar because the Sweetbriar rose was the first plant that me and Louise grew together from seed when we were seeing each other. So we named our home Sweetbriar. Oh. Such romantics. Well, I'm the romantic. No, Louise equally, you know, we share a wonderful love of gardens and plants, hence the reason why we have a nursery and we work together as gardeners and as nursery folk on our wonderful Noname Nursery. But this will be open next weekend, the 9th of July, for anybody who'd like to come see us. We have plants for sale, lovely homemade cake by Betty, and a cup of tea, of course, as well. That's absolutely necessary if you're visiting a garden for the National Garden Scheme.
I'm here with Claire from Beaver Plants, and Claire grows a lot of pond plants.
Yeah.
Claire, I've got a really tiny little puddle, if you like, in my garden.
Yeah.
Could you give me some advice? What sort of plants might suit that environment?
You can have, if it's just a small pond, you don't need to have a big pond. You can have a small pond and you just can have one lily in it if you want. Depends how deep it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be too deep. Lilies do like to go quite deep to be fully submerged. So ideally a couple of foot would be ideal. It depends how deep your pond is. And then you just leave it and it can just grow and it will just flower in the summer. And it will die back like most aquatics. They do die back come September, October time when it starts getting cold, and then they'll come back again in April, March, April, depending on when the weather is warm enough. Flowers, they generally flower in summer, obviously, as you can tell with the lilies. They can't always guarantee a flower, but it's a nice foliage. It's good oxygenating for your plant. Also, we've got oxygenating plants which do just as well. They help oxygenate the plant, and they can go submerged, fully submerged as well, and they can help. Other pond plants you can have, there's some pondside that we call pondside, so they don't necessarily like to go in the water, but around the pond, close to the pond's edge, if you know what I mean, and they'll do well there. Some can go some deeper, so some that are like zone 3 can go deeper, like your Pondaterias or your Equisitums or something like that, which is always a favourite. This is a Pondateria here. This is an Iris versicolor, and that can go fairly, so as long as it's covering the pot, it should be okay, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it should be fine. Oxygenators can go fully submerged, like I said. They're good for oxygenating. Some you probably won't see, some will just stay at the surface of the bottom. The Hipparus you should see. Some of the short growing ones like Anagallis, I don't know necessarily. I know it got its flower, so it might reach up to the top, if you know what I mean. Because they're submergents, they like to be quite deep, a couple of foot deep, if that makes sense.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about Beaver Plants themselves? How did you get started?
Okay, so we're based in East Grinstead in West Sussex. We're just on the borders of Surrey and Sussex, West Sussex, sorry, apologies. My dad established the business. We're celebrating 50 years this year.
Oh, congratulations.
So yeah, 50 years this year, and he started it with his dad, and then he took over, and his dad become ill, as you do as you get older, and he's just established it. We started off as aquatics, and then we sort of branched out to do other things like cannas, as you can see, garden plants like agapanthus. We don't have agapanthus here at the minute, but cannas, bananas, your cypresses, your ferns, your hostas and stuff, but we do mainly aquatics like water plants, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what we specialise in, and we sell a lot to garden centres across the UK, up Scotland as well. We supply them. We're mainly wholesale and only do the odd retail show. So yeah, we can sell across the country into your local garden centre.
Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or on my website. And please don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you've enjoyed the content.